the year goes on, I get closer and closer.
So to learn new skills and to build new acumen.
And we can always touch. It's not.
When you get that, then you get a lot more excited about being around children.
Normal, in a sense, with all of the changes, of course.
Or how you can transform your own business.
On developing the whole child, socially, emotionally.
Traditional route of teaching young people
how to set boundaries, because this little victim here needs to know how to.
Doing very well, so they use that term.
Sometimes expanded them to go up to 40 minutes.
All of those things in education, of course, those things are important.
Is going to our heads and our lungs.
The affirmations in the mirror for about 2 minutes.
What did you do in order to get yourself going?
This is amazing.
It happens, what seems to happen quite a bit in our school.
For the families to come, and they
is that really for the child, or is it for us, for the parent?
And doing new things for our brain.
Who's orchestrating everything in this universe?
Which parts of the brain are used?
Based on that map that we have.
See you with your smiling face.
Atul, thank you very much for allowing me to join you. Namaste to you, my friends.
I saw your smiling face in there.
Nice. I saw myself.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our spotlight for the Early Childhood Global Mastermind Group. I'm Marianne Mayer Harmon from the U.S., founder of Music with Mayer. And today we have Stacy with us. Stacy, say hello.
Hi, everybody. Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's good to have you back. Hopefully, Atul will be back with us next week. But for this week, it will just be you and I, and we can have a great conversation because I love this topic about following the leader and letting the leader be the child. And I know that you do a lot of workshops on that topic, helping early childhood people stay focused on that. And before we get started, let me tell them a little bit about you.
Okay.
So Stacy, I'm sorry, I should have asked you this before, but is it binge?
It's binge.
Binge.
Yes,
Binge. Okay. Stacy Benj is an early childhood speaker who approaches learning in the early years with practicality and common sense. You think everyone would just do that, but standing firm on the truth that children learn best through simple, authentic experiences. Stacy advocates for child-led play to build solid foundations for school and life success. I like that you say that because I often say that when people say, is your music helping people get ready for school? And I go, no, getting ready for life.
Exactly.
Right? In addition to a Master of Science degree in human development and family studies, Stacy spent 10 years in the early childhood classroom teaching children ages birth through 5. As she has for the past 20 years, Stacy shares her passion for child development with fellow early childhood professionals with informative and enlightening presentations. She is a master level trainer on the Texas Trainer Registry. So you can learn more about her at her website, stacybenj.com. And she's going to talk with us today and also let us know about a wonderful book that she has coming out soon. So Stacy, hi. Tell us a bit about who you are and how you came to be so passionate on this topic.
Well, like you mentioned, I studied child development when I was in college. Both my undergrad and grad degrees really focused on just overall human development. And, really specifically looking at birth to 5 and looking at how that lays the foundation, like you said, for life success. I kind of think that we've pigeonholed ourselves into just looking at school, and really what we're doing is going to benefit the children way more than just those 12 years that they're in school. Yeah. But I started working when I was in grad school and up until when my youngest son started kindergarten. I started working at preschools, teaching, caregiving. And then when my youngest son started to school, I started doing more of the consulting and presenting. But just like my time spent in the classroom when I was teaching, the core of my learning environment was child-led play. I had the fortune of working in a school when I was about 22 years old that actually was one of the original 4 schools that NACCE had their original accreditation based on. And it was just absolutely amazing. And our entire day was playing, but it wasn't, I remember like watching that, and I would just be mesmerized watching children play and being able to make connections of all the things they were figuring out and all the things that they were developing and all the things that they were learning by us creating an environment that really encouraged that play. And early in my marriage, my husband's career took us several different places. So I ended up working at quite a few different centers and organizations. And I always made play the core of my learning environment. It wasn't what we did when we were finished. It wasn't what we did early in the morning, when the kids are first dropped off, or in the afternoon waiting for parents. In the middle of my day, we had at least an hour and a half of where I just opened the classroom up and children were allowed to play. And I think with COVID, and one of the things I've heard parents say is, my children don't just go play. And I feel like the last year or so, I've started speaking out even more for child-led play. And it's just so, when you look at child and human development, it's so critical for that. Children can thrive without a lot of the things that we present to them, but they cannot thrive without that play that provides that face-to-face time, human interaction, just really real life experiences.
Yes, and Atul is saying hello to both of us today.
Oh, hello.
And it's nice
Hope
to
you're
have
doing
you
well,
on this.
Atul.
With what you're saying, it makes me think about, I was a music teacher at a school, and the pre-K teacher called in sick. So they asked me if I'd cover the pre-K classroom. And she left this art project with everything pre-cut and directions on what the flower was supposed to look like, where each piece was supposed to get glued. And the principal brought me in the room and showed me, and then she looked at me, she goes, "You're not going to follow her directions, are you?" And I went, and she said, one of the reasons I brought, and when I handed this stuff out, the kids were like, but where do we put the leaves? Because she had them so structured that even art was in play. And I said to them, "Have at it. Do what you think you want." And the teacher was devastated because it was parent night and those were getting hung up. She was not happy with me, but the principal, she was okay with it. But people take, sometimes it's like they want to be a teacher for an upper grade level, and they think that they have to be real serious, but come on. So
and just think of, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'll get to
I was going to say, kind of like, on this example that you're giving, I love in my classroom, I had, again, everything was very open-ended, but I had this open-ended art center. And so it was like, you go do what you want. Like I had a bulletin board that was just for that original artwork. And I loved, and it was up to the child if I posted it or not, and I had some parents come in one time, and these boys had spent like an hour creating this robot, and it was scrappy looking, and I remember the parents being like, "I'm not sure." And I was like, "Let me tell you about this. Let me tell you, your child spent 45 minutes and these are the conversations and this is what they figured out." And, and when I started putting it to them that way, they were like, "Oh, I never thought of it." But it's like and they learned, exactly. I'm like, they learned so much more in that experience opposed to if I had than a cookie cutter thing for them to follow, step 1 to 10. So
exactly. We have a comment here, or a question actually. So I don't know if you could see it, or do you want me to read it?
Yes. So Stacy, do you work with kindergarten teachers in public school? In so many schools, kindergarten is not so different from first grade, and I'm concerned about this. I'm very concerned about this too, and I think we kind of have a push down, for lack of a better word, agenda kind of being pushed on us, where we're seeing kindergarten turn into first grade, and I always say nothing's going to change unless we get the conversation going. And I know that in public schools, a lot of times their hands are tied because they have to follow like specific guidelines. In Texas, it's called the TEKS. And yeah, I'm definitely concerned about that. But I think we just got to keep advocating for bringing play back in. And I think on our part as educators, we kind of have to prove this is how children develop. This is what happens if they don't play. And, but yeah, that is something that I'm very much concerned about.
And there's a lot of research, and Jim Mayer and I discussed this last week on a study out of Harvard on that because of a lack of play and because of adult-led play, they're seeing a rise in anxiety and stress.
Oh, yeah.
Children need that outlet of play. And
exactly.
Kindergarten should still be playful. And unfortunately, with this question, I think is coming from a WOW Kids school. Yeah, it's very relevant because kindergarten has gotten too regimented.
Right.
And it's like the topic here, like I always tell a teacher, lesson plans are what you plan to do before the kids get there. They're not set in stone, because if you were planning to talk about butterflies, but there was a dead bird outside, yes. You're talking about birds. Exactly.
If we follow the children's lead and their cues, it's amazing, like how much more enriching the experience can be, And so, but yeah, and I think that sometimes we have this perception that children are not learning unless we, the adult, are leading it.
Yes.
But the reality is if we just step back and let them go with it, they're really going to learn way more. We're the same as adults. I'm like, if I'm going to go to my bookshelf and pull a book off to read, I'm going to be pulling stuff about child development play. My husband would pull something completely different. But when we immerse ourselves and we start diving into what we're interested, we learn so much as adults. Well, we forget that children are the exact same, but they're doing it through play. And so if we just let them take the lead, they're going to learn and develop so much. They don't always need us there to do that.
It's kind of like the Reggio Emilia philosophy.
Yes, yeah. And I think too, just, I kind of think of it as like the old fashioned play. Like when I was younger and like what were the things that we did, and, we didn't have the adults structuring things for us. We just figured it out, but we benefited from that. Although, at the time, we just thought we were playing we were just playing with our friends, but there was so much that grew from those experiences.
Yes, we kind of learned to shape what we enjoyed into who we were going to be as adults.
Exactly. Absolutely.
So talk about why it's so important that we allow children to create their own play and lead us along.
Kind of like I think we were just mentioning, when we let children take that lead, they're going to show us what they're interested in. And what we also know is if we let children do that, they tend to challenge themselves more than we do as the adult. And it's not, I think sometimes we have to change the mindset. And I'm not talking just academic things. I'm just talking like overall, development. So think of like, when we were kids, if you're on the playground swinging on the swing set, my goal as a child was always to swing a lot higher. And when I was going to dismount off the swing, I wanted to go higher and further every time I jumped. Well, that was the challenge I put on myself. And I didn't have an adult telling me to do it. It was all intrinsic. It was all me doing that. And so we find that when children have these opportunities, they challenge themselves more and they're more persistent to complete the task because it's important to them. So on that swing, it was important to me to go high and far when I dismounted. So you better believe I was back on that swing every opportunity I could get. And I think too, when we let children lead their learning or lead their experience, you're going to see them repeat things until they get it to a point that they're satisfied with it. Like, you know, okay, I accomplished what I wanted to accomplish, job well done. When we look at what children, you know, learned from that, you know, first of all, you have the pride of I was able to jump high and far. But again, it's that persistence to a task. It's sticking with something till you're finished. It is attention to a task, you know, so, you know, we would spend hours doing that. You know, we talk about children's attention span. They develop that, they increase that by leading their play because they stick with the task much longer. And so I think that's one of the reasons that when we take over as the adult, we really stifle that process. And one of the things that I encourage when I'm working with teachers is if you see children playing, I think we have this like need that we need to make everything a teachable moment, but we don't need to do that. If the children are playing and they have something going, we don't need to step in and go, what color is that? Or how many, you know, because then that then ends their experience. I have a colleague who said she was observing at a school and some children were out on the playground, like jumping off a rock, and they were having the best time. And this one teacher goes over and says, how many times can you jump? What, you know, she started those. And my colleague said that those kids who were having this amazing experience just dispersed because the adult interrupted. The adult was trying to make it something it wasn't. And so, you know, as the adult, we've got to like decipher sometimes, I need to stay out of this and just let children take that lead and let them dig deep and figure out what it is that they're trying to figure out. But, you know, again, we've got to design environments that really allow children to just lead and go and play. And not only at school, but at home as well.
Those are some really good points. It'd be kind of like you're in the kitchen making something and just playing with the recipe, and somebody comes in and says, maybe you might want to try putting cinnamon in that. And you're like,
yes.
You want to take over.
Exactly. Or it might be like, well, that wasn't my vision at all, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Continue, please. Right.
Well, yeah, and you know, also what goes with that is a sense of trust. You know, oh, do you not trust that I'm going to make this recipe taste good? And I think that we do that with children when we enter in, that we're showing them, you know what, I don't trust that you're going to get to where you need to be, you know? And so there's kind of a trust issue there too. But, you know, sometimes I say the best place for a teacher to be is out of the way.
That's a very good statement. Say that one more time for everyone.
Yes. Sometimes the best place for a teacher to be is out of the way.
Yeah. And basically, our job is to facilitate learning, observe, and keep them safe.
Exactly.
Safe. You know, like I know that if there were adults around, you would have been told, you're going to break a leg. Don't swing so high.
Exactly.
And you know what? Natural consequences teach us things too. And children aren't getting those anymore.
No. And you know, one of my passions is physical development. And I just want to throw this little side note in. We think that telling kids, you know, be careful, don't swing too high, whatever, as we've contained children, trying to keep them safe, they're actually getting injured more because their bodies are not developing and learning how to handle the situation, like the brain, the body, how it connects, and like our sense of balance and our proprioceptive, which is where we are in space. Like, so if children today are now jumping off a swing, their body doesn't know how to handle and adjust, to that. Where we as kids had so much practice with it that our body was capable. So, and I don't want to side rail, get us too much, but I did want to bring that up. So
it's not really side railing; it's right there, because I saw some research a couple of months ago that kindergartners, there's a large majority of kindergartners that cannot balance on one foot.
Oh, yes, yeah. It's amazing how, and this kind of ties back, well, it does tie directly back to play, since children are not having just these natural experiences. One of my sayings is children's brains tell their bodies what they need to develop, because we're very intuitive when we're born. Again, children are very intuitive to what their bodies need, and then children's bodies respond. And that's why we see children constantly spinning or trying to hang upside down, because their brain is saying, I need you to have these movements for us to develop this to help us later in life. And we're not allowing children to do that, or we're structuring their day so much that we, the adults are in control, that children are not having those opportunities. And so what we're seeing is then a delay in this physical development. And like you said, the sense of balance. Well, that is, our sense of balance is so important. First of all, it's keeping us in our chairs, but this is what keeps our eyes steady when we're reading across a line on a book. This is what keeps our hands steady when we're writing on a line. It all works together. It's all, but that development has to start somewhere, and it starts with those early years with children leading their play and moving their bodies as their brains see fit.
Yeah, creating balance is extremely important. And as you say, I think it's interesting the point you're saying about how your brain lets you know, because I have the brain fact page on Facebook. And one of the brain facts I talk about is that balance is even more important than touch. And we can die from touch deprivation. We literally can wither, But so how can balance be more important? Because without balance, you don't like to be touched, or you can't touch others because you don't have balance. And tying these little things in, so many people are so focused on letters and numbers and reading, and they don't realize that getting balance in place will make all those other things stronger eventually, which leads me into the third point we were going to talk about, how doing all of this benefits later on in life by creating adults who can have these skills and be self-led.
And there's I think there's so many responses to that. So like we're talking about just the physical aspect, just, us as adults, just physically functioning in the world. Well, our brains and bodies have had enough experience and enough development that we're able to do that. And again, that happens when we're playing as young children during those critical years. But I think also from like a social and emotional standpoint, when we look at really what makes adults successful in life, there's not a secret formula, but when we kind of look at, study people who are super successful, things that we see is it's usually people who are real good at initiating themselves, intrinsically wanting something, not having to have somebody tell them go do this, but just internally going, this is what I want, and I'm going to motivate myself and go for it. And then that taking a risk, and not just, I'm not meaning a physical risk, but the risk of stepping outside the comfort zone and knowing that I can try that. If it doesn't work out, I'm going to be okay. I'll get up and try again. And that's what we see a lot of successful adults have, is that they'll step outside the comfort zone. If it doesn't go, I don't want to say if it fails, but if it fails, you just get up, dust off, keep going. But those are things we learn through play. Those are things, you know, stepping outside your comfort zone. That might be for a young child, just on the playground, going up to somebody they don't know and saying, hey, will you play with me? That's stepping outside the comfort zone. If by chance that child says no, which is that child's right, how do I handle that? How do I overcome that? And just those social and emotional experiences that come up through play really starts to develop those skills that take you into handling adulthood. I think the face-to-face interaction, learning how to interact with others, learning to compromise. I love Dr. Peter Gray and some of the books he's written, and he writes a lot for Psychology Today, and he has a really good TED Talk. So if you just Google Dr. Peter Gray, TED Talk and play, but one of the things that he talks about is there's a common goal in play, and that's for the play to never end. And when he said that, it took me back to my childhood, because I'm like, you know, we'd get outside in the morning and the goal was for the play to never end. Well, if one of your peers doesn't like what's going on and they try to leave the play, we start changing the rules to compromise to keep that person in. Well, think of having that skill as an adult in your adult relationships, whether it's personal or work or whatever, but knowing how to compromise with a person, to come together with a commonality, just together, and then kind of moving on. And that's one of I think the amazing things that child-led play lets happen that I really would say cannot develop without child-led play. I don't know any program or any curriculum that can teach that skill if you're not actually experiencing it. But we really learn a lot of life skills, you know, through that child-led play.
And so something you're saying made me think about that. Maybe, and you might have an answer and go, yes, I've read research on that. We are stifling when we give them a task to do, then it's possible they might not do it right. And so it's the pressure of, this wasn't my idea. So she might have a plan, and what if I don't do it right? So we're stifling them from being successful.
Really, right. And then I think we kind of stifle that thinking outside the box, that creativity, that, you know, always having to abide by something, always having to do the certain steps or whatever. You know, when we, the adult, again, step into the play, or we try to take over, we don't let those processes happen.
Right. And I just see we're getting a hello here from Jennifer Green. And
hi.
She's like the epitome of the let the children just explore, you know, the from the nature aspect. And so she chimed in at the perfect moment there. It's just, I don't know why it's so hard for people to understand. Maybe an adult feels like if they're not directing the children, then they're not doing their job.
I think that's part of it too. And so one of the things, you know, from an education standpoint that I really encourage is, you know, again, think about the benefit with us stepping out of the way and us, you know, just letting the children take control. So I think it's in the book From Teaching to Thinking, by Margie Carter and Ann Palo. I don't have the book right in front of me, so I'm pulling that from memory. But I think they're kind of the ones who said, just because you're not directing the play or directing the activity does not mean you're not an active participant. So I was an active participant by designing the environment. And when I talk about designing the environment, it's not designing activities. It's not coming up with a hands-on experience. It is putting materials into an environment and moving out of the way. And so I think when children are playing, our role as the educator is to, first of all, be available. So if a child has created something and they're like, Miss Stacy, come look, man, how powerful that I have time. I can go and sit on the floor and let you take 10 minutes to tell me about this amazing block structure you just built. I mean, that is more powerful than anything else we can do. Or if a child brings you something they've drawn or created, and yes, tell me about it. So be available. Be available if the child says, Miss Stacy, will you come play with me? Absolutely. And I am a firm believer, adults do not enter child's play unless the child invites us. When they invite us, then you go in, you still follow their lead, but that's the only time we enter their play. If nobody's inviting us in, then this is your opportunity to observe and document. Watch the kids, and you're going to learn a lot about, them and development, but what do you see them doing? If you have to do any sort of assessment, be familiar with the assessment and start watching for evidence in children's play. It's amazing the things that you'll start to see. Document it, put it into a portfolio. So we're still active, and children are still learning and developing. And keep in mind, there is a time where we do teacher-directed things, as long as they're developmentally appropriate and have the interest of the child. But there has got to be an equal balance where children are in control and developing, that self-control, which I failed to mention earlier. Self-control is probably the key thing children need to be successful when they go to school. And that can't develop unless we hand children control. If we're always in control, they're not developing self-control. But if we entrust them with that control and move out of the way, that's how that develops. So yeah, and from a parent standpoint, if your child's off playing, that's awesome. You're still they're developing those things that frees up your time a little bit, but just because we're leading it doesn't mean that we're not doing anything. We're doing something very important by just kind of getting out of the way and letting them play.
Good. I love the points you're making. So
thank you.
Yeah, they're so very helpful. And you started to touch on the next point of giving teachers and parents that are listening strategies of how to put this type of teaching and leading into action.
So, one of the things I always say is that children need time and space to play. So they need, at school, it is the classroom. The classroom is, part of being child or children centered is that is their space. That is for them. At home, it might be the backyard or whatever, the child's bedroom. But one of the things I kind of learned over COVID is you can have all the time and all the space to do something, but you've got to have motivation. So that's what I'm looking at, because I'm looking at all my closets that at the beginning of COVID I could have cleaned out, and I didn't because I wasn't motivated. But
exactly.
children,
me too.
Yeah. And so children need to have that motivation. So look at what is it that they're interested in, not that what we feel they need to learn about, but what are they interested in? What do they like to play? What books do they like to read? Even what TV shows do they like to watch? Because that's what they're going to be acting out in their play. So is it, getting manipulatives that really kind of center around that topic or whatever. But just really kind of designing an environment and then inviting them in and letting them play with it. I think one of the things we kind of saw with COVID was, I know like parents who are trying to work from home were finding it difficult because they felt like they had to be entertaining their child as well. And that's where I was like, no, just let them go play. But the response was, but they don't know how. So it might be,
you don't know how. Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah. That's what we hear. And I hear that from teachers too. Children don't know how to play. And that's very scary. Children need to know how to play. They need to know how to handle boredom. But it might start with us as the adults sitting down and us saying, hey, come play with me. I'm going to build blocks. Come play with me. And kind of start going with that and see if you can kind of, and this is not going to happen overnight, but like over several weeks, can you start pulling yourself out of the play and going, hey, why don't you go play with blocks? And then, whatever the child's playing with, if you see, you might ask them, what else would you like, for the play? But kind of starting with that. But I think it's mainly like having an environment that really does encourage children just to go play. And I'm all about loose parts and everything too. And again, kind of going back to my childhood, I remember going to my grandma's house and she didn't really have toys for us to play with. But man, we would go pull out the dominoes and we would just build with the dominoes, or we would she had marbles and we would make designs with marbles that we did on our own accord. It wasn't anybody telling us to do that. So kind of think of that mindset, with your children. And like I said, in a school setting, just find things children are interested in, put them in the environment, and encourage them to play with it. And keep in mind, they might play with it in a way you didn't even imagine, and that's okay. I think it's even better if that's what happens.
Yes, and creating that environment for them, letting there be things around that would get their interest. Sometimes too, like if there's something a child sees you doing,
yes,
and it's something you really want them to learn to do, but you don't want to say that to them, so you start doing it and look really interested, and they'll come over and say, "What are you doing?" Oh,
they absolutely will.
Remember those old pot holder things where you had to weave?
Yes.
My daughter saw one of those, and like, kids don't do those things anymore. But she saw it and she said, "What do you do?" And I go, "Oh, this is from when I was a kid. Can I try?" So yeah, I have the ugly pot holder still hanging in my kitchen, but
yeah.
and
that's an excellent example. Yeah.
What does the weaving teach? What do we learn there? Like, you don't have to go about, and that's one of the things, like Reggio Emilio, it's like, find a topic children like, and then just leave stuff out there that goes back to it. And they wind up doing math and language and science. It becomes a whole STEAM activity without a plan. Sometimes this plan is no plan.
Yes, I always say that the simple always produces the biggest outcomes, and we try to make all of this rocket science, and it's not. It's just, what children are missing today is just that simplicity, and it's just those simple experiences they need to build, just to build their bodies and their brains, and it's not. And I don't want to diminish, because the development that's taken place in those first 5 years is absolutely incredible. But children need to have real life, authentic experiences that could be just as simple as playing with Legos, playing with blocks. So,
can you read this comment here?
Yeah, letting go of our ideas creates space for children's ideas. That's an excellent quote right there. That, and I think letting go of our expectations too, and just going, hey, here you go. Show us what you can do with this.
Yeah, I remember my daughter had a friend that they used to love to create things in the kitchen. And we would the adults would sometimes get together to play pinochle, and the kids would just play. And they were in the kitchen one time and they just wanted to create something. And I can remember one of the spouses was like, "But aren't you wasting that?" "Well, how are we wasting it?" They were taking things like paprika and cinnamon and putting them together. And then what happens if we add flour and water? And I didn't care, and they're like, "Are you going to let them taste it?" "Yeah, but it's not going to taste good." "So what?"
Yeah, that's how they're going to learn. Yeah.
So what?
Yeah.
That's that curiosity that, just like this person could read this too, but it's like curiosity does not necessarily kill the cat.
Yeah. Yeah. And this one says, curiosity leads to connection, and being present rather than seeking perfection creates so many more opportunities for curiosity and connection. Yeah.
Yes. And I cannot see the names of who is posting. So if you can let us know who you are, we'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
We're getting down to the end of our time, so we love the comments that are coming in here. And if you have any questions, please, now's the time to ask them, because we're leading into exactly how Stacy can tell you how to get in touch with her. And I know that you've quoted, mentioned, I should say, a couple of other books, but you yourself have a book coming out. And okay, so that comment was from Rebecca Weiner from Learn, Play, Grow. Yes, and she does a lot of what you do. I don't know if you and Rebecca have connected, but it would be a good connection.
Okay, that we've got to make that happen then.
So
yeah,
tell us about the book and yourself, how people can use your services, get in touch with you.
So I did this past year, I have spent writing a book. It's on the fundamentals of language and literacy. It's going to be published by Exchange Press. I don't have a published date yet. I'm assuming it's going to be sometime in 2022. We also don't have a title yet. The manuscript is written, and they are editing it right now. But it kind of the motivation for me writing the book was based on several of my trainings, but it's really looking at getting away from doing letter of the week, kind of pulling back from the alphabet, because you kind of mentioned earlier, we get so fixated on teaching children their letters, but there's actually so many more fundamental skills that need to be in place for language and literacy. And what I try to make the connection in the book is how child-led play has to happen for those to develop. So the play theme very much is intertwined in this book, but I'm really excited about it. And like I said, it'll probably be coming out at some point in 2022. Like you mentioned, I have my website, which is stacybenge.com. I have my contact info on there, but you can also follow me on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. I probably do the most on Instagram, but that's where I'll be posting once the book, we start getting to the point to pre-order the book and when that is going to be published. But yeah, all my contact info is on my website. And like I said, if you have any questions about anything we talked about today, feel free to message me or email me, and I'll see what I can do to help.
You also do some consulting if someone wanted to reach out.
Yes, I do consulting and I do trainings. I haven't, as I mentioned earlier, just over COVID, haven't been presenting as much because I've been, writing, but I do presentations and conferences. And so you can contact me through my website. And my passions are language and literacy and physical development, and all that developing through child-led play.
What a beautiful way to work with child development. So I have a couple of other comments. One was, yes, play is the way. And
yay!
I think this is Rebecca again.
Yeah, loving the discussion of authentic learning experiences.
Yes, and I think that, when I was working on the title, I was thinking of the Peter Pan, actually, the following the leader, right? And the leader is a child, just like in Peter Pan, the leader was a child. Had an adult gotten in there, I don't know whether they would have had as much creativity. And
that's a great connection there. And we've got to trust children. We need to give them credit. And I think up until this generation that's young now, a lot of us were kind of left to our own devices. Not that our parents were not watching or anything of that nature, but we've seen childhood change, and we've got to see them as capable beings and trust them to take the lead. And I think they're going to lead us ways that we could never have imagined.
Yes, they are. And that's a great comment to end this on. So, Stacy, I want to thank you. I've enjoyed getting to know you better, and I hope we can connect in other ways as we move forward. Everyone, thank you for tuning in today. We appreciate having you here. Stay tuned every Sunday, and also check out our Thursday mornings when we have different musical people show ideas of how to use music in early childhood. So thank you. And
thank you.
Stay there, Stacy.